Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening and welcome to the Dave the Mystic Show. This is episode number 119. Paranormal investigator LeeAnna Jonas from Team SRIP. This is January 14th, 2013 from Littleton, Colorado. A couple announcements. If you've registered with Blog Talk Radio, you can see and join in the chat, and we usually take questions from there if you want to post. Also, please consider signing up for show announcements through my website at www.holisticbeliefs.com. Please feel free to email me with comments after the show if you'd like, or posting comments with feedback. We always like to hear from you. For tonight's show, in the broad context of healing, there can be spiritual connections that should be addressed to help in the healing process. Dave the Mystic uses clearing and shamanic journeying as needed with clients. In this context, please join us with guest LeeAnna Jonas, who works with the SRIP team to do paranormal investigations and work with spirit entities as needed. Here is LeeAnna's story. We are a paranormal investigation team that specializes in the mining towns of Colorado. We practice scientific and metaphysical beliefs during investigations. We also use a non-provoking, respectful approach with communication and practice protection before and after all investigations. There is also the use of debunking methods during investigating and evidence review. We will help spirits who ask to cross over, and with aid from our angel reader, Kelly Patterson. We have done over 50 investigations and have been featured on the Paranormal Challenge USS Hornet and My Ghost Story to air soon. The team members are LeeAnna Jonas, founder and lead investigator and sensitive, Tawny Heron, sensitive and tech manager, and Allie McNeil, a Wicca medium and healer. All members have had experiences as children with the spirit world. We are firm believers, but we also will not jump to conclusions that is paranormal until we have proof. We use our bodies and scientific equipment and will not put any evidence as paranormal unless we have looked at all avenues to explain or can't explain as the unknown. For our listeners tonight, please feel free to call in at any time. We'll also take questions from the chat window. So with all that, please join me in welcoming LeeAnna Jonas. Hi, LeeAnna.
Well, hello there, Dave. Thanks for having me on the show tonight.
Oh, this is fun, and we're looking forward to it. I'm glad that we made the connection so that you could be on.
Yes, even though the Broncos lost.
Oh, that's too bad, and we're freezing to boot. So, but it's maybe cold outside, but it's warm inside, so that's great. I always like to start with childhood experiences and first exposure to gifts with our guests. Did you have experiences as a child, and were there any adults in your life to help you understand what was going on?
Actually, all three of us girls started getting into the spiritual world, the other side, when we were children. I myself saw my first apparition when I was in 5th grade. Two of my other friends and I used to mess with the Ouija board, which is a big no-no, and we also used to do seances. And we were conjuring up, trying to communicate with a woman we heard in the news that was a babysitter, and she actually killed the infant that she was watching. And for some odd reason, when we were trying to channel this spirit, we looked up, and all three of us saw a woman with a baby in her arms with a knife in her hand. And we all just started crying because we were in 5th grade. We didn't know what we saw, and we ran upstairs all at the same time. And which is really funny is 30 years later, I finally came in contact with one of those girls. And I said, do you remember? And she says, all I remember is crying and running, but I don't remember anything else. And I'm like, well, let me fill you in because I've never forgotten. And ever since then, it's always been driven inside of me that I need to seek and try to explain what I saw. Now, with the other two gals, Tawny is of Cherokee descendancy. Her mother, or grandmother, I should say, is kind of a sensitive. She sees spirits, talks to them. And when she used to hang out with her grandmother when she was a little girl, her dead grandfather used to show up all the time. And Tawny used to see him and communicate with him. And then when she would go home and tell her parents, they would shun her and discipline her and tell her never to talk about it again. So for many years, she had to close that door off. And until probably in her early 20s, it started, all those memories started to come back. Her and I met at a tanning salon. She was a manager, and this location is chock full of spirits. And we just started talking, and she had told me about the apparitions that she saw where she worked. And she said, it's all coming back to me now. And her sensitive side was coming back. And she said, I'm never going to let that get dormant again. And the more that we do investigations, the more it's come out in her also. Now, Allie's a Wicca medium, high priestess, and when she was little, she used to communicate with spirits. There was one in her closet. Her mother, to this day, she cannot tell her mother. Well, I should say her mother's dead, but, I mean, her father's still alive, but she could never tell her parents anything that she saw. She used to see spirits, she used to talk to them, but she had nobody to confide in. And to this day, she can't even tell her relatives about it. They will not accept it. So I think all three of us at very young age, this has just been growing inside of us. So it's a very cohesive group, the three of us. And the more that we do this, the more it just seems like our gifts are coming out in abundancy. And it's very surprising, the things that we can, from the time that we started until now, what a big difference it is.
No, that's great. I read about other mediums who had experiences like Lisa Williams, where she was 4 years old and she saw faces coming through her bedroom wall, and she'd go down and tell her parents, and her parents would just say, that's your imagination. Go back to bed. And it's like, boy, I'd have a hard time going back to bed if I had faces coming through the wall towards me.
Well, and that's what, and we actually have people that will call us and say, my children are seeing things. Can you help me? What can I do? And the first thing I say to them is listen to them and believe them, because what they're seeing is most likely real. And for you to discount that, that's not going to help matters any, because that hurts. They're reaching out to you and they're trying to explain what they're going through. And if you're not going to be an advocate to that, that's just going to hurt them. And then they're going to crawl into a little, they're not going to want to talk about it anymore. So the first thing I say is listen to the kids. Kids know. Kids are innocent. They see things that we don't. Well, most don't. But, that's the time where, for some reason, the spirits feel comfortable being around them also, whether they're good or bad, because they know the kids can see them.
Yeah, about the second clearing that I did when I first got into clearing, it was just kind of coincidental in terms of having a couple people approach me and say, you do all this other stuff, can you do clearings? And I asked, well, what's going on? And this one woman down southeast of Denver, her children were seeing witches fly out of a closet, and she had to trust them and believe them because of their ages. And she said, this is not acceptable in this house. And so, I learned more and did the clearing, and then I had to do a second step to the clearing because I found that there was something pretty dark hanging around. And once we got rid of that and talked to her, and all the phenomena had gone away, and it's like, wow, this is a neat experience. But absolutely, kids will see things that you have to honor their experience and then try to puzzle it out on what's causing it.
Exactly, and they're so lucky that you're able to do that and help them, because there are so many people out there that have no one to go to, or they don't have the resource, and they live in fear. I know people that grew up in haunted houses, or their parents were attacked by, like succubuses or incubuses. In fact, I know someone personally that happened to, and it's just the traumatic. I mean, those kids will never be the same, whether they turn out normal or not, and chances are they probably won't, because I mean, could you imagine seeing something like that as a child and your parent is being overtaken by a demon? It's crazy, to think that there's people that have to go through that in life. It's really a mess.
Oh, yeah, and just to have that kind of stuff come up, I don't know. I know a young woman, she's in her 20s, and when she was a teen, they were in one house as a rental house, and the doors used to routinely slam open and slam shut as they walked around the house, except when her father was there. And then the house would be quiet, kind of like putting the lie to what they're saying. And then when the father would leave and she was there with a couple sisters, then the doors would start getting into slamming mode again. And her parents were split up, and she ended up, she couldn't take it anymore and went to live with her mother for a while because that house was just too much energy.
Well, and it sounds like the spirit was either afraid of him or just playing the game. I'll just hit the people that are weak, and they knew that he was strong or a skeptic, so why bother, So they're smart. Them spirits are smart, especially the nasty ones.
So what led you really wanting to do paranormal investigation as an adult? That's not something that everybody says, well, this is on my career path as I grow up.
Well, I've always been into trying to communicate with spirits, even way before all the shows and the hoopla came out. I've always tried to make communication. In fact, when I was in California 14 years ago, I was on the Queen Mary. And it's weird how they know when people can sense them. And I came in contact with a spirit on the boat at that point, which I was scared to death to be on the boat because I know I've drowned in past lives. But my sister said, "You're going, too bad." But I've just always had connections. I had a girlfriend that I grew up with. Her boyfriend committed suicide in the apartment above her. They were in a house, a flat, and he hung himself in the closet. And she was below, passed out on her bed, and he left it on her voice recorder as he hung himself. And whenever we would talk, he would show up. Whenever we would talk, he would start banging on stuff. She could feel her hair being touched, or she could sense him around. So I guess I have a little bit of a gift on that psychic end. I don't know how to use it yet. I usually can tell you when people are going to do things, and it usually happens. And I'm a very good judge of character. I can meet somebody right off the bat and tell you whether there's going to be a problem or what their personality is. But it's just something that's always driven me. And then, of course, when all the shows came out, and the one that started me was Most Haunted in England. It was a bunch of British folk that I feel very connected with, too. I feel like I've had a past life in Britain. I love the English, and they were more the metaphysical side, the Wicca side. They didn't use as much of equipment. It was all what they felt with their bodies, which was interesting. And I just said, oh, boy, I can do this. I can learn to do this. I know this is my avenue to make communication. And then all the scientific equipment came out a couple years later on the shows, and I just studied it. And when I got the opportunity, my first real ghost hunt was up in Estes Park with another group, and we were at the Elkhorn Lodge, and they had gone there many, many times, and they knew the spirits, they knew the stories, which is very nice if you can go into a place many times and you get to learn the story of each spirit, because they'll come back and talk to you every time. And I kind of took over. I went for it, and I tried to get in that group, and they didn't have any openings. Tried to get into another, no openings, and I said, "The heck with it, I'll do it myself." So in October 2011, I started. Yeah. So it's been going on ever since, getting better and better.
Well, that's pretty neat. Tell me more about how you ended up with the connection to mountain towns. I do have a medium friend, and she's been in some of the casinos up there.
Yeah.
And there's some that had problems with, and she said it was really bizarre because they don't like to publicize it, but back when they weren't 24-hour, they'd have the security cams going, because in this one casino, they said, we're getting plays on the machine, but there's nobody there, so we don't know if somebody's breaking in or what. And they looked at the video cam recordings, and the machines were playing themselves.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Oh, are you talking about Doc Holliday's, perchance?
That may be one of them. I think there's been a couple up there that have had phenomena going on like that.
Johnny Z's did too, I remember. It's really weird. I started going up there. I do kind of have a connection with that. My ex-husband's first marriage, they hung up there and got into a head-on collision with a drunk that used to be at the Gilded Garter. The guy used to sit at the bar all day long, and they ended up suing the insurance company, and I guess Bob Brusco, he used to run the Gilded Garter, he had to pay them in increments every month. So it's kind of weird that I ended up in that same casino, which is now Doc Holliday's. So there's kind of a cord there between me and the town. And I found this out with a lot of people that we talked to in that town. They were chosen. They had the bug. When they came up there, it didn't matter if they were gambling or just tourists. They were called to come up there, and half of them live up there now. And they will tell you straight up, it was a yearning. It was a calling to come up here. So I really believe that the spirits in that town, there's a connection with the living and the dead there. We just ended up going to a ghost crawl, and the Masonic Lodge, we were told there were children there. And later that evening, my friend and I were just cruising around taking pictures, and the guy who took care of the place happened to be walking by, and I'm like, can we go in there? We're with an investigative group. I just told him that. He's like, sure, come on in. And he just took us on a tour, and I think we had recorders with us. I don't remember. We just had our cameras, and we started talking to him. Next thing you know, we booked an investigation, and that's how it started. And ever since, we've fallen into another location, and I think it's because the spirits trust us that we just keep on getting very easily another gig. And then now that we've tried to cross somebody over, I think it's gone around the spirit realm in that area that we're out to do good, and I think they're happy with us. So the history there, the death there, it's just incredible. It's just chock full of spirits, chock full.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think that there's something special about that energy that would have been there regardless of the history of the mining towns, or do you think it's the energy of the mining towns and, to a certain degree, the debauchery up there that left those energies in place?
You could go back to the land before anything was, of course, Indians. We had Indians here in Colorado, and who knows who else way back in the day. I think it has a lot to do with the disruption of the land there from them mining. If there were any spirits there that were at rest, they wouldn't be after that. I think that conjured up a lot. Also, with all the minerals and the gold and, all your earthly gems and such that are in there in the ground, I think that's a beacon for spirits or energy itself. And for some reason, people like to go up there and kill themselves. I'm being honest here. Yeah. People go up there and commit suicide all the time. They feel so comfortable in that town that they want to stay there. Yeah. Everlasting. So I don't know if there's something funny going on up there. I haven't figured it all out, and we're trying really hard. Someday we may get the answer, but I truly think that this goes way back, and then once the miners came in and dredged up that land, I think it created either vortexes, portals, whatever you want to call them, that have opened it up. Because it's so crazy there.
Do you have any intuitive feelings that there's a significant Native American burial site there, or that it was used for that purpose?
I really haven't heard.
Explorers came through?
I really haven't heard of any Indian burial grounds per se. Most of the history that you find out about are just the actual cemeteries up there, the Masonic, the Catholic, the Protestant, Knights of Pythia. I did hear in Nevadaville that there used to be a lot of paganism way back.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's, Wicca even is kind of based on Indian beliefs. So it could have stemmed from way back then. I've never heard of really too many Indian burial grounds, but I wouldn't be surprised if there wouldn't be any. I mean, we're chock full here. I mean, even look at where DIA's at. DIA's sitting on one. So it could possibly be, but they're all interchanging from all the different dimensions and the different times. Mm-hmm. But I think they've all have enough energy that they know how to talk to each other. And I'm finding that more and more. The more we investigate, we've got proof of that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Cool. So what are some of the classic haunted buildings up there or in some of the other towns, not just Central City and Blackhawk?
Well, Morrison's another little ground of chock full of energy. They're near a meridian line that we found out. We did a investigation at the Cliff House, which is a bread and breakfast, and there's cottages outside. And the EMF there is off the charts, and it's not man-made EMF. We tested all the way around. The fluctuations could go all the way to 57.0 to back down to 2. We could not get a steady flow. I tried to talk to the Colorado Geological Society.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a meridian line that just travels right underneath that property. I think they said give or take maybe 13 miles. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't think so. But it was just incredible the amount of energy that's there. And Morrison was tied into Central City because that was one of the stops on the train. So it went from Denver to Morrison, and then it would go up when you went up that way to Cripple Creek, up to Morrison. So a lot of the folks would go back and forth between those two towns.
Oh, okay.
So there's a connection. There was a connection back then, and there's a connection now.
Well, something I should point out to you. Years ago, I went to a lecture on ley lines, and we do have a UK listener, which is cool, and the British Isles are covered with ley lines. But one of the things that this gentleman showed us, and we actually tested it, is if you take two, say, cobblestones, maybe 6 to 8 inches diameter, and if you bang them together really hard one time, you energetically connect them, and if you keep one here and a traveler takes the other one with them, with a pendulum, you can detect the straight line path between those two rocks. They've been coupled.
Wow.
And to demonstrate it, he had about 30 of these cobblestones in a circle, and they were numbered, and he said, I'd like you to use your pendulum and find out which two have been paired. And I went around the room, and I found them right away. And it's like, finding 1 out of 30 is, would be pretty good. Finding the 2 out of 30 that are paired was great, and I could detect the path between them across the circle. And so I guess for what you're experiencing there, I wouldn't have any doubt that ancient peoples of some type may have been doing things like that created lines that go through there, and over time and centuries, they've really been reinforced. So that may be part of the energetic connection there, or there may be a master stone in that area somewhere that ancient peoples routinely used as they would take their traveling stone, bang it on the master stone, and take it with them, and then they sort of could create their own distributed map to get to other places.
That's interesting because here again, you're dealing with a town that has underground tunnels that would connect everywhere throughout the town, and with the stones that are underneath them. Who's to say that back then they didn't travel with stone, or even the miners? God, wouldn't it be great to talk to a miner right now that somebody was actually there then and could just sit down and tell us how everything was?
Mm-hmm. That'd be pretty cool.
Wouldn't it be cool?
Yeah, that's a tough life. I have high admiration for hard rock miners. That's a hard way to make a living.
Especially in the cold, the circumstances that they had to go through back in that time. It's not like they could just walk into a nice heated place. They were in the elements year round, and the travel up and down the hills, and just like coal miners, I feel sorry for them too. That's a very, very hard life. Very hard life.
Yeah. Very dangerous. How about some of the classic hotels up there? Like, have you been to the Stanley?
Oh yes, many times. I go to, and I just want to tell people that the Stanley, as much history as it has, it is very commercialized now, unfortunately. That's how they make their money, off the spirits and off getting people in and doing ghost hunting. So when I've gone, it's really to just be a separate investigator and get your own team up there when there's no one in the hotel is far and few between. Unless you got some bucks to pay to rent the place, you're always going to deal with contamination. You're always going to deal with guests there, and sounds carry. I've gone to events, paranormal events through Darkness Radio, which is Dave Schrader's radio station, and he has events, and all the para-celebs show up, and then we do a hunt. And sometimes we get stuff, sometimes we don't. It's kind of hard when you get that many people together. But in another way, it's kind of cool because you've got people that believe, and you've got all different types of people with all different types of gifts and all different types of energy. So it kind of lights the place up a little bit too. And it's a good party too, though. Definitely a good party. A lot of us go there just to socialize and see people we haven't seen, and it's kind of a reunion. But no, I believe that there are spirits there in the Stanley. I had a really bad experience there with 3 of my friends. One friend was in the hunt on Friday night and picked up something nasty, and she was just angry, and she couldn't control herself, and the room that they were in just went cold. No matter how high they turned the heat on, they could not warm that place up, and they knew something evil was in there. So I did have a Wicca gal with me who's a high priestess also, and she came in and we did a cleansing, but the problem is we were in a circle, and it jumped, because I was holding hands with a girl who is basically possessed, jumped from her to me. I had to fight it. I've never been through that ever in my life. That was the first time. Scared the hell out of me. Luckily, my friend helped me out and got rid of it. But then another one came from the other girl, and it was a woman or a little girl, and all I could do was cry. It jumped from me to her back to the lady, and that lady took it home with her, and she was sick for months. Sick. They could not find out what was wrong with her, and she would cry, and it was. So I know that there are spirits there. Whether they're just there because of the Stanley, or they're there because they know that's a beacon and everybody hangs out there. My stepson, who died, always contacts me at the Stanley or in Estes Park, and that's where we used to vacation. We take the kids there on the weekends. So I don't know if it's a beacon of energy and the spirits gather around, but the Stanley Hotel I definitely think is haunted, but I definitely think that the ghosts are being exploited there. The spirits are. I think that I feel bad for them because I think they need a break.
Okay.
So.
Now, do you, in a place like that or others that are haunted, do you routinely see things yourself, eyes wide open, or do you close your eyes and see them mediumistically? How does that correlate to what you get on your cameras?
Well, I usually feel them. I feel energy. Like if somebody, if a spirit was supposed to walk through, they walk through me, I'd light up like a Christmas tree. The energy it'd be like putting my finger in a light socket. Tawny can see things and hear things.
Okay.
She can hear them talking, and of course, Allie can hear them and communicate with them and see what they look like in her mind. It's all in her mind. It doesn't mean it's out front. Now, we use HD Sony cameras with IR lights, infrared lights. We have captured energies. One of my friends had a problem in her home. We went in there. What we do is we do a full investigation, try to find out where the hot spots are, where we've had some communication. Then we set up 4 IR lights with a DVR system, and we leave the premises for an hour. Nobody there. We sit outside for an hour, and we actually call it an energy zipping in and out of the walls upstairs, exactly where they said the people who lived there said they were having experiences.
Right.
So we have captured that. We capture voices on our voice recorders, EVPs. We use Ovulus, which is phonetic. It's either phonetic or he has a database of words in it. Bill Chappell out of Loveland, Colorado, is an engineer that makes that particular piece of equipment. And what it does is it transforms the energy from the spirits, and it puts out words. It sounds like a computer voice, of course, but believe it or not, the spirits that we find here in Colorado love it. They know how to manipulate it. They sit there and they tell me a story. They can't go in a full sentence, but they can bits and pieces, and see that as investigators we have to think about it and put it together. And sooner or later it makes sense. So it all kind of ties in together. It's like when we feel something, we'll say, hey, let's get the camera over here. Let's get our meter, which picks up EMF. We kind of can feel areas. I usually don't rely on the medium too much until we need to, because I want to see what we can get scientifically first. Because people in the paranormal world don't want to hear what you feel or see. They want to see it for themselves. They want to see it on an audio. They want to see it in video. Otherwise, they're not going to believe you. So you're up against that. So you have to prove it. It doesn't matter what you feel. You know what's going on, but you have to prove it to them.
Do you know the name Stan Romanek? He's been abducted a number of times by ETs, UFOs, whatever, but he seems to be a lightning rod for phenomena, and to a certain degree he invites it in. But at some of his lectures he's shown, I don't remember exactly if it was infrared or just low light camera shots, but you can see these dark, wispy, smoky things moving through the room, and it doesn't give you a warm feeling seeing those things, or they seem to be pretty dark entities.
Well, they say shadow people are usually a very high energy. They can because they can manifest that well, and they're usually not the nicest. It's been said that the shadow people are usually more of a negative energy. That's what I've heard. I've seen them. First time I saw was at the Masonic Lodge in Nevadaville. I saw a gentleman up in their actual worship room that they have up top, and that was the first time. I thought it was one of my teammates. I'm like, what are you doing standing next to me? They're like, what are you talking about? I'm way over here. I'm like, what? And that same weekend, I saw my first apparition up in Central City, other than when I was a kid, and it was a side profile of a man's head, and he had the big muck chop, the big sideburns that they used to wear back in the 20s. And he was he was working. He didn't even notice me. So when you see stuff like that, but see me, I think it's cool. I'm not scared of it. People are like, oh my God, I'd be running. And I'm like, no. I mean, the adrenaline rush of actually seeing something, you can get stuff on your camera, and the best thing about it being an investigator is actually catching something and trying to debunk it, and then finding out, oh my God, I can't explain this. And but I'll have to tell you, and I want to ask you about this, if you ever heard of it, of energies actually being able to take over or harbor in dolls. I've heard this happen a lot in the paranormal world, that they can actually hang out in dolls. And I think that's why a lot of people have a fear of dolls, clowns, mannequins.
Right. Well, I think the clown thing all came out of Poltergeist, because that was one of the scariest scenes, is to have that kid's doll get taken over. But, yeah, I guess I wouldn't be surprised to see them being involved with an object. You know, when I do my clearing work, one of the things I talk to people about sometimes are being a little bit careful and respectful when they buy antiques, because that dresser that they bought at the antique store might have been that dresser that a new bride got as her big wedding gift, and it was her pride and joy her whole life. And when she passes, she's still connected to that, and then becomes resentful that other people would think that they could own that dresser. And so sometimes I do end up doing clearings for people on their antique collections, or especially if they do a lot of collecting and then reselling, you know, like out of a garage. It's like, well, you're probably bringing in a lot of stuff that you really don't want there. And so some of my clearings have been with people who do that kind of work. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see an affinity for dolls, especially since they have somewhat of a, well, two things about them. One is that they do look a little bit humanoid, and but the second thing is they may have energy invested in them, especially by children, in terms of becoming a focus of sort of an imaginary playmate, and that may create enough energy that remains in that becomes a magnet. So, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, it was really funny because, you know, I've always believed in that, and Allison and I were just cruising through because she wasn't with us when we did Doc Holidays, so we just happened to be down there one night, and I said, come on, follow me, and, you know, I just sneak through places. Nobody even notices us. We're going where we're not supposed to go, and we were up on the second floor, and there was a mannequin sitting there behind a piano, and we both stood there for a minute, and I noticed that its arm moved. And I didn't want to say anything to her, and she noticed the same thing and didn't want to say anything to me. And then finally we just looked at each other, and we both said, did you just see that? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh, my God. And then we freaked out because I thought, if that damn thing gets up,
walk the room once a day.
Beat our pants. I mean, and so I ignored it because I didn't want to give it the attention or the energy to mess with us, because when they smell fear, that's not a good thing, especially if you're dealing with something that's negative. They'll feel, you know, they feed on the weak. So I'm like, nope, let's go, come on, and I just blocked it. I put a block up around me, and I said, just keep on going, and don't forget you even saw that. So we go around the corner, and there's another one on the stage. I'm like, oh my God, get me out of here. And unfortunately, in some of the casinos there, they have mannequins in the basement because they dress them up as either call girls, because back in the day they had bordellos there. Right. And it's just like, it's a place we never know what we're going to run into. It scares the living crap out of you when you see a mannequin there because you don't expect it. So, we both saw the same thing, so I cannot deny that. Cannot deny it.
Okay.
But I do agree with you on attachments. There's a show out there called The Haunted Collector. John Zaffis runs that. He is very well known from back in the 70s. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I haven't.
John Zaffis?
No.
He was a demonologist. He used to do exorcisms. He was into the paranormal before anybody was into the paranormal. He was well known, and now he's older. And what he does is he goes on investigations and he tries to see if there's an actual item that is causing the haunts. And they usually find something through process of elimination, and then they get rid of it, because that's usually, just like you said, people bring stuff home, or it was left there from back in the day. Somebody moved into an old 1800s home that had the furniture already there, and, you know, family heirloom, who knows?
Right. Well, it's, you know, for people who are psychically powerful, especially for those who are not happy, agreeable people, they they're egotistical and using it for what we would say are the wrong purposes. They can invest energy into objects, and I suppose they could plant them in your house, or you could receive something that you think is an innocent gift, and it's got some energies in it that may continue to multiply over time. And from my point of view, they could be a pathway into your house for this person doing some of the dark stuff. So I'm careful about those types of things. From my point of view, I normally, I guess maybe I'm a wimp, I don't know, but I do all my clearings at a distance. I don't like to visit the houses, and I joke with clients and just say, well, I don't really want the things that are there to know that I'm coming when I'm getting ready to do the clearing. So we kind of have different views of the world and approaches, but it takes all kinds, and so.
Well, but I do agree with you in that respect, because when we find out, in fact, this is when we're going to be on my ghost story this season. It's filmed up at the Gilpin County Jail. It's about an investigation that we did there. And actually, we were warned by our angel reader before we even knew who she was. We just ran into her at the location she worked at. We did an investigation, and she said, don't you dare go in there. There's something mean and nasty in there. And I'm like, yeah, well, okay. And then, of course, your curiosity gets to you. And my one teammate, Tawny, loves the dark stuff. So she's like, yeah, let's go. And I'm like, I don't know. And I thought, okay, we're going to go for it. But we always use protection. We do a protection ritual before we go in. We use oils. We use stones. We have protection pouches with certain gems in it for negativity, especially black tourmaline. We will wear certain types of stoned jewelry. And then we'll do a white light of protection, ask for Archangel Michael to protect us, but still allow us to make communication. I want the wall up so that we don't get attachments, but I still want to communicate with them. But you're putting yourself in danger, and I'll tell you, the man that will be on the show actually has worked there for 17 years, and he has therapy sessions with the nasty entity in the basement in the jail. He goes in there and tells this guy his woes. And then things start to happen with the people in his life. Yeah. So this thing is attaching to him, and it's gotten to the point to where it's starting to change him. And he knows it, but he's too far in now. I want to cleanse him, but why bother? He's in the environment. Until he's out of that environment, there's nothing you can do for him. He doesn't want to stand up to him, and that's what you have to do. But after our first investigation, we were so... Oh, my God, this rattled us, this guy in the jail, because Tawny saw him when we were doing our walkthrough. Because whenever we go into a place, we do interviews on camera with anybody who has had any experiences, plus the history. We do a background check on the history and try to find out what's happened in the place in different areas. And so we'll go on a walkthrough prior to the investigation. And she saw a man in the back staring at her, a dark shadow, scared the living crap out of her. Well, later on that night, he jumped out at her. I've got this on video on our YouTube channel, and there's a lot of choice words that came out of her mouth. She was honestly, a lot of bleeps. She was scared, and she's not the type of girl to get scared, but this guy scared her enough. And then later on that night, Allie, my medium, this was her first investigation with us, and what a doozy that was for her. Here she is, a newbie, and she's feeling all these things. And I told her, there's got to be a safe word. When you feel you're being invaded, you need to tell me, and I'll get you out of there, because I want to protect them. I don't want anything bad to happen. And it got to that point when we went back in there the second time that night in that jail area to talk to them. All these words were coming out of the ovulus: murder, blood, will die. And I'm like, holy crap. And Tawny's like, we got to get out of here. And then it jumped. Allie could feel it trying to penetrate through her stomach. And she's like, it's trying to get in me, LeeAnna. We got to get out of here. And then I yelled at it. And I said, you're not playing nice. and we left. And we didn't go back in there until he showed up to get us back in the place because we left our cameras running then. And we were too scared to go back, and we've never had that problem, never. And that thing tried to invade us. It went home with Tawny. It took a Chinese screen in her family room and threw it across the room by itself.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had to go over there and try to cleanse her, and I started, that's when I really got mad because I'm like, damn it, I told you to stay away from us. And me and him have an understanding now, me and this entity.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean he still doesn't want to do us harm. And what I really think is, from what I've heard from our other two, my angel reader, is that there's 3 kingpins in that town, 3 of the nasty ones, and they get together. And I think what they're trying to do is take over all the spirits there. They might not be able to move as freely as they want to, so they want to hook up with us because they know that we're going into all these places and can bring them along.
Mm-hmm.
That's our theory.
Okay.
That's our theory. So we're working on that to see if that's a possibility. But all the signs from all the investigations we've done, you got to understand, we've done well over 30 investigations in that town alone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a puzzle. You put the pieces together.
Right.
So.
Well, we have a couple callers. I'm going to bring on the first one.
Okay.
I believe this is a regular. And hi, LeeAnna, are you there?
Yes, and I'm glad I'm a regular. I'd like to be extraordinary one of these days. Blessings to you, LeeAnna. Good evening to you. I was wondering if you could and wouldn't mind telling me if you sense any attachment in the place where I dwell.
Where you dwell?
Yes.
I think Dave would probably be able to answer that. If I was on site, I could probably feel something. I'm not as talented as he is, where I could go and astral planes and move along to different areas. I wish I could. Maybe someday I will be able to do that. But in all honesty, if I was at your location, I could probably tell you what I would feel. But I have to be on site. I'm not good enough yet to where I can just figure it out being across wherever you're at right now. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
LeeAnna,
it's something that you develop, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, LeeAnna, when I check, I think you have a couple earthbounds there, and they do need to be moved on, so I'll just go ahead and take care of that. And
oh, thank you.
Help them move. Yeah, they don't need to be there, and you don't need them, so that should take care of that. But those are the easier ones. Sometimes there's other things that are a little bit more tenacious and trying to hang on. But for right now, that's a good first start.
Well, I guess I'm going to, as soon as I can, contact you for the rest of it, because I feel that, I don't know if it's where I dwell or it is around me or many, many years, but I don't know, trying to surface and be free. It's always so interesting to listen to your shows, Dave, your guests, yourself, everyone. Just
well, thank you.
a blessing, just a blessing, yes.
Well, thank you for calling.
Well, thank you.
And thank you, LeeAnna, for being there. And you really sound interesting. I'm so full of energy.
I am.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, LeeAnna. You have a good evening. Stay warm.
Thank you. Well, I'm in Florida. It is warm. But
lucky
there are
lady.
No mountains. Yeah, but there's no mountains or sights to see here. So you trade one thing for the other.
Yeah. Well, you have a good evening.
Thank you, Dave. Good night, LeeAnna.
Good night, honey.
Good night.
Nice lady.
Yeah. Well, we have another caller. This is area code 917. Hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, I don't know if I should ask any paranormal-related questions. I don't really have one.
Well, that's okay. Ask whatever you'd like.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, can you give me a general reading? Because, like for me, I'm moving back to Europe because I don't have the green card or any other of those things to stay here. And let me ask about love related. Well, anything you pick up on love or work. I would really like to work, and I don't see that happening here, so I'm moving. I don't know when yet. Do you see anything related to that?
Well,
that's Dave's question there.
Yeah, okay. I see 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
And what I see is either northeastern France or on into, I guess it would be Germany, somewhere in that area, as being the likely place that you're going to land and find a situation. I don't see a whole lot more than that because that's really not my strength. Those are just the impressions I initially had. So I hope that helps. There are other guests you may want to watch the show that are much more in tune with those.
Love related?
In my head, I hear 6 months. So it's going to be a little while, but I do believe that you're going to have a relationship that'll form about that time. But I'm not real great on predicting the future. I'll be honest with that because people have free will. And
yeah, I don't really care about predicting the future. I was more like, I guess that wasn't a very specific question. Thank you so much. I guess I'll just thank you.
Okay.
Good luck
well,
to
thanks
you.
for calling in. Good luck. Bye. Okay. So let's see. One of the things I wanted to bring up again, because you mentioned it earlier, and I've had a number of clients with this. Let's talk about succubus and incubus, because probably a lot of people, they may have heard that term once or twice, because occasionally you see it in some of the either horror movies or comic horror movies. But I've had several clients who've had experiences there. And one of them, I had to caution her that she should discontinue that relationship. So
yes.
Why don't you talk about that for a minute?
Well, the succubus is when is the woman spirit that comes in, and from what we've been told, it draws the sperm out of the male to seed another person. And then, of course, the incubus is the other way around, as a man. Now, I've heard of people that have been attacked sexually. Actually, in the beginning, they make it pleasurable. They want to get that person to trust them and to get hooked on it and start a relationship with them, as weird as that sounds. Especially they draw in somebody who might be alone or, of course, weak, and they play on their emotions to make them think that they're being loved and taken care of.
The other thing I think is common is a lot of them feel that it is almost in that fugue state of dreaming where they kind of wonder if the sexual experience they're having is just kind of a fantasy light, exiting of a dream, that type of thing. And yet it keeps happening over and over, and it seems to be getting stronger with time, too.
Well, and usually it is in the dream state that they approach them, and then, like you said, you question yourself, and then it comes to the point to where you try to stay awake for it, and then you can actually sense it, and you're like, wow, this is really happening, but I like it. So then they build your trust, and then it becomes a regular thing, but it turns out bad because in the end, that's when the abuse starts.
Yeah, it's a very corrupt energy. So.
Mm-hmm. And then it ends up being physically abusive to where they start hurting these people, slapping them around, bruising them, violently. And then you can't get away. You're stuck.
Right.
You've given your soul up to this thing, and it's almost like you have to go through an exorcism to be able to break free. But, yeah, it gets pretty bad. And then what do you tell people? Seriously, what do you tell people? Everyone's going to think you're off your rocker. Right, you're having sex with a ghost. No, I'm coming in with bruises on my arms. This thing's getting, nobody's going to believe you, and that's where it gets to the point where I think these people, they have no hope. They don't know where to go. But it happens. It's just like being possessed, basically. It's just in a little weirder way. But yeah, it's definitely, it happens, and it's sad. It really is.
Yeah, I've had a couple female clients, and both of them, it was pretty early in the process. It was still pleasurable for them, and had some serious talks about how this is not a path you want to continue on. This is not good stuff.
No,
and a lot of women are very reluctant to say, I'm having a sexual relationship with something that shows up out of the ether, and I'm kind of in a dreamy state. And you say, "Oh yeah, you're just, you're just masturbating."
You're having a wet dream.
Yeah, and it's like, no, you don't understand. There's somebody else there, and so it's that's. Not a good path to follow, and I guess people ought to be aware of it. I mean, this is not a made-up thing or pretend or just out of the the funny papers or the comical ghost movies. I mean, these things do exist.
And I think that's what people don't realize about the paranormal, and also the people that think it's so cool. They watch the shows and they're like, yeah, let's just go out and do this, especially the young kids, your teenagers. They think it's the in thing, but they have no idea what dangers there are. They don't use protection. They don't respect. In fact, I'm sure you've heard of Riverdale Road up in Thornton. It was a trail of tears, and that there's deaths all up and down that road. I went up there one night and met a bunch of kids. That's all they do is hang out and try to talk to the spirits, which is cool because they're not out drinking and doing drugs. But, they're sitting here at this tree, and they heard a girl got burnt there and that she's a bad girl. So they're screaming at it. And I'm like, what are you doing? No! How do you know this girl wasn't killed? How do you know she wasn't a victim? Who are you to come up here and yell? Well, that's how they do it on TV. Well, that's not how you do it. I'm sorry. So you get your average person off the street who thinks it's a cool thing to do. They have no idea what they're doing. Next thing you know, they pick up a nasty entity, and it comes home with them, and it invades their family, and they can't get rid of it. It happens. It happens. That's why I'm so protective, because I've got my son here. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. Most of your investigators that are single, they don't care. Oh, come on, bring it on. Well, wait till it pulls you out of bed by your ankles at 5 in the morning, which it did to one of these celebrities. I mean, he had to build a dungeon in his basement to house what he's pissed off. It happens, and it's scary, and people don't realize there's a dark side. This is not something to mess with. It's not.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to stop here. This has been fun and fascinating. We have just enough time left for you to tell people where to go find your materials.
Sure.
Online?
Yes, we have a Facebook site if you want to plug in Spirit Realm Investigative Project. Or if you can't find us that way, you can go into Google search and just put the USS Hornet, was the battleship that we did for the Paranormal Challenge on the Travel Channel last year. Or you could go to YouTube and plug in SRIP3. That's our abbreviations, and there's 3 of us girls. And you can watch our actual evidence on our YouTube channel. That's open to anybody. But if you do get on Facebook, please like us and show us your support. We're going to be on My Ghost Story. I'm still trying to get a date from the producer. They said by the end of the season. They're supposed to start back up now because of the Christmas. We're episode 60, and they were on 52, so I'm trying to do the numbers here. But check out on the bio channel, My Ghost Story, and sooner or later we're going to be on there. So, plug in Spirit Realm Investigative Project into your search bar, and I'm sure in Google you'll find all our different links to where you can get a hold of us.
Okay.
And I want to thank you for having me on. It was enjoyable, very enjoyable.
Well, this is great, and I sure appreciate you being with us. And next week, our guest is to be announced. It's going to be the holiday, and there's a possibility that I might pre-record a show. So we'll just see. So to all our listeners, have a great week, and thanks for joining us tonight. And good night.